know little of hunting beasts, but I figured stealth would be in the cards.
Different moon spawn require different approaches.
And for wendigos, it's best to make enough noise to wake the dead?
That's the idea. If we attract the wendigo's attention, it'll come to us and save us the hunt.
I suppose that makes sense. But how are we supposed to fight? There's barely enough moonlight to see where I'm putting my feet.
My eye is well adapted to the dark.
That's great, Dedris. Really it is. Thing is, my eyes happen to lack the same adaptability.
One moment. Ikivo imola.
You're just full of tricks. Though, if you can see in the dark, why bother carrying a lantern?
It can be useful for other reasons. Besides, it was a gift.
A runic lantern seems like an expensive gift.
I avenged a soldier and retrieved this from her corpse. When I tried to return it to her husband, she was adamant that I keep it as payment. Now, fasten it to your belt. You're gonna need a two-handed grip on that spear of yours.
Like this?
Were you never taught the fundamentals?
Killing isn't exactly a typical part of being a healer.
Don't worry. We've got time for a quick lesson about the basics. A very quick lesson. Hold the shaft closer to the back with your dominant hand at the end. Point your opposite foot forward and bend your knees slightly so you're ready to move at a moment's notice.
Is this good?
Good. Now plant your feet. When you're on your toes, you'll be faster to dodge, but also easier to unbalance. If it charges, you will stand your ground and thrust, keeping it out of reach. Don't overcommit your reach. Wendigos are quick and intelligent. They know when someone is vulnerable and will expose any weakness. That being said, if you have a good angle, go for the skull. It's the brain we need to destroy as their hearts stopped beating long ago. Any questions?
Yes, a lot, actually.
They'll have to wait. It's here.
What's it doing?
Tearing tree bark is territorial for some moon spawn, but not for wendigos. They never stay in the same place for long. It's trying to intimidate us. It wants us to run.
Are we going to?
No. I'm gonna stand behind you so I can draw my bow.
What?
My knife is a poor option against a wendigo, and beating it to death with my bare hands will be rather difficult.
A warning would have been nice.
You're the one who wanted to help.
At the time, I wasn't aware you'd be using me as a human shield.
Listen to me, Elise. You'll be fine. Focus on maintaining distance rather than attacking. Use your spear to drive it back. If it continues past your attack, I promise it'll have to tear me apart before it gets to you. Now, can you buy me about 6 seconds?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I think I can manage that.
Here we go. Well done. Leave the rest to me.
By all means.
Fara Gale. Shit. This one's quick.
It's coming back around.
That'll be our chance. Try to wedge the spearhead between the ribs when it attacks. I just need it to be still for 1 moment.
I got this.
Lower your spear just a bit. A little more. Stop. And brace.
Got it!
Fara Gale.
We did it!
Indeed. Now that I've seen you're competent, watch my back, will you?
Why? What now?
I need to find out if this wendigo spread its curse to anyone other than your father, if it was infected by another wendigo, or if they brought the curse upon themselves.
And how are we going to do that?
By viewing its memories using its remains.
Naturally.
There's nothing natural about it. It's a form of necromancy, which is a practice that is rightfully feared by many. Despite my personal feelings about death magic, I find myself outweighing the negatives with the benefits in this regard.
I thought necromancy was banned decades ago.
I can provide a detailed explanation later. In order to study older memories, I must work on the body soon after death. I can trust you not to abandon me, yes? I'll be indisposed until I finish my atonement.
Sure. What's a moonspawn against a woman who was trained by Dedris the Nighthunter for all of 2 minutes?
Good.
What could go wrong?
Meine Thream. Blood. Follow blood. Follow the scent of blood from beneath the skin. Find the one who hides it for me. Bleed them. Bleed them until their heart has nothing left to pump. It's not fair. It isn't fair that they should live the happy, peaceful life I was denied. Monster. I'm not a monster. I never wanted to become a monster. There's a memory in that word. A hatred. What was it? I tried to dredge up memories buried deep beneath blood and hunger, but they keep sinking deeper, further from my grasp. Now there is only the burning anger that screams for violence, for vengeance. I have to go further back. Kiara lay in an empty bed, in an empty room, in an empty house, screaming tears into her pillow. The daily accusations piled upon her were always too much to bear. She used to stare into the dull reflection of her father's rusted breastplate for hours, wondering why the purple hue of her eyes made any room she entered fall silent. She didn't sleep much. In her dreams, she saw the faces of her tormentors, equal parts resentful and afraid. She would scowl and wish terrible things upon them, and terrible things would happen. On a rare, well-rested morning, if Kiara happened across any of the others she'd seen in her dream the night before, they were careful to avoid her. And if she managed to catch their gaze, their eyes would be dark and bloodshot. As a child, the loneliness had filled her like the poison of a sallow bloom, tainting every facet of her life with bitterness. They hated her without a reason. It seemed only appropriate she hated them with one. So it was that on those nights when she lay awake, looking at herself in her father's breastplate, she began crafting her own set of armor. Beside the hearth, her father would tell her she was beautiful, and she could do no deed, however vile, that would make him ashamed of her. And yet, when they left the house, he always checked twice to see if her blindfold was secure before opening the door. And thicker her armor grew. Brill, the girl with golden hair who made her heart flutter, claimed not to care what the town council thought of her. But when they had lain exhausted by the elderberry bush and Kiara had suggested they walk back together, Brill had grown very quiet. When Kiara pressed the issue, she was met with an empty excuse and guilty eyes. And thicker her armor grew. When a sickness claimed Kiara's father, nobody came to help her bury him. They only watched from their windows and spread rumors of what she had done to make such a strong and healthy man wither away so quickly. And thicker her armor grew. By the time Kiara was a woman grown, her armor was so thick nothing could pierce it, not the scorn of the ignorant, nor the touch of the few who tried to love her. Her world was cold, and she walked it without a cloak to break the wind. Brewing inside Kiara was a deep, festering anger. It demanded to be unleashed. It wanted to scream and cry and hurt, but it could not escape. For while Kiara built unscalable walls to protect herself, it also meant everything inside those walls was trapped. Spite became hate. Hate became malice. Malice gave way to a wretched hunger, a hunger that screamed of righteous indignation. It whispered vengeance, but she kept it locked away. She wouldn't be the monster they all said she was. Kiara swung her legs over the side of the bed, at last coming to a decision. She needed answers to the questions that plagued her life. She left her cottage without shoes, for no one would sell their wares to her, and disappeared into the mountains without telling a soul. The others would not miss her. I see prey fleeing through the bushes. Kill it! I long to soak in the warm sanguine flow. Fur is a shield that splits beneath my claws as I answer the crimson call of hate. This is who I am. This is who they forced me to become. Those angry, fearful looks and guilty green eyes.
Dedris. Hey, Dedris. Hey!
Huh? What?
Are you alright? That sounds intense.
I'm fine. This creature's memories are proven difficult to navigate. It's caught between distant memories and a blood frenzy. I appreciate your concern, but please do not interrupt me again.
Just try not to lose control. You were practically frothing at the mouth for a while there.
I'll do my best. A witch lived atop Mount Tessid, the third tooth of the strip of mountains known as Skolvo's Jaw. Perhaps she could provide some answers. Kiara had never gone far beyond the borders of her home. The world was a violent place, and her village, unwelcoming to her as it was, provided shelter from that which prowled in the dark. Mount Tessid always seemed such a nearby place in all her father's stories. He would talk about how the witch came down from the peak to steal children that wandered too far from the safety of the frail wooden houses that made up their village. The journey took Kiara 3 days. By the end, she was nearly delirious from hunger and nights spent huddled in tree hollows holding her breath while moonspawns stalked through the night. Her feet bled through their wraps, and she had to keep reminding herself why she was here. Despite her efforts to focus, Kiara's thoughts wandered to strange places, like how the wind seemed to hold the shrill cry of a newly orphaned child, or how the trees bent low towards her, almost eagerly, with their needled branches. Tessid's peak was the lowest of the mountain range, too low for the snow to have yet blocked her path entirely. Kiara expected charms, totems, or wards as she approached the summit, but she didn't spot the skull of any tiny animal, nor any foreign runes written in blood. Instead, all that waited for her was a large hut built of mortared stone so old it was stained a faint yellow. Smoke billowed from the chimney, black and opaque. There were no windows looking into the hut, so Kiara couldn't be sure what to expect when she knocked on the warped planks that shook under her hesitant touch. She swallowed hard, saliva catching in her throat. Had she made a mistake coming here? The primal rage she felt lying in bed, unable to stomach the isolation any longer, had mellowed to the typical hungry malice that had grown so comfortable inside her. Maybe she should just leave now before... The door swung open with a sound not unlike snapping bones. She stood staring at the ground, still unsure whether she should proceed, afraid of what answers she might find within.
Come in.
A voice sounding like cracking firewood spoke from within the hut.
The food is still warm.
Another kill. Another furred beast to feast upon. But I've killed so many like it, and nothing can sate the roiling hunger. Perhaps the meat is rotten. Perhaps I need better prey. This hunger can't be all there is. Kiara dug into the meat like a rabid animal. It was tough and without salt or spice, but it was warm and it filled her stomach. She cast her gaze across the hut. It didn't look as she'd expected it to. It was clean, and more than that, it was beautiful. From the outside, one would have believed this to be the witch's cottage that it was. But the inside was furnished with cushioned couches, a table carved from marble, and a hearth that blazed with comfort. She couldn't stop herself from sighing with relief as her torn feet became lost in the wolf's fur rug beneath the table, the softness of it caressing her wounds. Only one thing reminded her she was not in a place that could be called safe. At first, she'd missed it amidst the strange normality presented when she entered the cottage. Beside a covered bed was a night table of dark, polished wood. Upon the table perched a raven with gray feathers and far too many eyes that did not blink. Kiara's eyes flicked back to her host, a short, hunched woman with stringy black hair and one eye sealed shut by a layer of green crust. The other eye, which was wide and pale, ran up and down Kiara's body in rapid movements, pausing briefly when it met Kiara's own eyes. The hag, who up until now had said nothing beyond her initial greeting, began to rub her hands across the marble table, her fingers writhing like insects in the fire, joints popping as they contorted to follow the black veins across the white surface.
Tell me why you have come,
she said. You already know why, Kiara replied, eyes darting to the raven. It still had yet to blink. The hag laughed at this, hands coiling along the patterns in the marble.
I am called many things across many lands, girl. Carpenter of flesh, brood mother, moon weaver. Never have I been accused of having a seer's eye. Why, I'm half blind after all.
By the bedside, the raven cackled, sending pricks down Kiara's spine. Kiara hesitated for a moment, unsure if she truly wanted an answer to the question that had dogged her heels for all her years.
Am I a monster?
She asked.
What I say doesn't really matter, now does it?
The hag replied with a smile.
You came seeking an answer from a monster, so when you laid eyes upon me, you might tell yourself you aren't like me. But here I am, just as human as you are.
The other villagers say my eyes belong to devils, that I doom those I look upon,
Kiara said.
Nonsense.
The hag curled her fingers sideways along the black lines, breaking bones as she did so. The marble seemed to soften under her touch, changing their pattern to look like a face. Kiara's face, she realized with a jolt.
Your eyes are a gift, girl,
the hag continued.
They are a sign that within you stirs the power of a Dreamwoa, a dream witch.
Kiara didn't understand what the hag was talking about, but before she had a chance to ask, the hag said,
Your eyes do not make you look like the things that swarm from the night, girl. It's your heart. There is a monster that lurks at the heart of all mankind. You have tended to yours quite well, and if you want it gone, all you need to do is open its cage.
How?
Kiara asked if there was a way, any way to free herself from the monster that tore her apart from the inside. She wanted to hear it. She wanted to be free of it.
Why are you asking me?
The hag stopped her hands from worming across the table inches from Kiara.
You're the one it speaks to. Just do as it asks.
Kiara sat in confusion, trying to understand what the witch meant. Then, with a burst of speed uncharacteristic of one so withered, the hag reached for Kiara. A crooked nail stabbed forward, split her lips and clicked against her teeth. The hag whispered a word that sounded close to skin, but was hidden behind an accent Kiara did not recognize. Kiara jerked back in disgust, spitting dirt, ready to yell. The hag just laughed, joined by her raven.
Listen well, girl, she said. Something burns within you. It has already consumed too much of you to turn back now. Best to embrace it, I think. You'll enjoy it more if you do.
Kiara rose and made to leave. She'd had quite enough of this witch and her riddles. She turned and fled, not bothering to shut the door behind her. As she did so, the last thing she heard was a string of whispered words no louder than a dying ember.
We always hunt what we cannot have.
Something about the words made Kiara shiver. She tried to place a finger on it, but her mouth was flooded with the taste of sweat and dirt, and all she could think was how disgusted she was. Not just with the hag, but with everyone who had robbed her of the peaceful life she'd always wished for. What wrong had she committed? Her legs trembled and she bent over, vomiting up the meat she'd eaten. It crawled away and she made no move to stop it, cursing herself for wasting her time and earning a new set of nightmares. Kiara descended the mountain. She fed on berries and drank from shallow, half-frozen streams. A day's travel remained between her and her village when she finally collapsed from exhaustion. The sun passed over Kiara, ignorant to her suffering, distant as everything she had ever known. She lay there until it grew dark, and she began to shake from pain and cold and grief. Tears rolled across her cracked lips. All the while her monster whispered inside her head. It seemed louder ever since the witch's cottage. When Kiara heard her name, she barely had the strength to raise her head to look for who had spoken it. She wept again when she saw Brill's round, worried face. The tears didn't stop when Brill covered her in a jacket, leaving her own arms exposed to the cold of night, nor when she lay beside her, telling her how stupid Kiara had been to go off alone like that. And for a brief time, the voice quieted in her head. The voice came back the next morning when Kiara asked Brill what this meant for her, for them. Brill looked upon her with somber green eyes and said it meant nothing. It couldn't mean anything. Brill said more, but Kiara couldn't hear her. She was listening to the voice, and it screamed of violence and vindication. Another corpse, this one human like I once was. There was a girl, terror in her eyes. It reminds me of someone. Memories are evil things. They pull on me, distract me. Why won't they leave me be? I want to hunt. I want to be free. I want to feast. No, not another one. Not again. Kiara cried as she held Brill beneath her. The woman she loved lay bloody, her golden hair sticky, her green eyes blotted red. Kiara's hands shook and the stone she carried slipped from her grip, falling one last time upon Brill's brittle skull. She let the monster out. Kiara fled into the woods, stumbling through bush and stream until she could no longer stand, falling at last beneath the shadow of a great pine. Her clothes and body were soaked in blood, most of it not her own. She couldn't go back to town, not like this, not after what she'd done. With no other options, Kiara lay there until her sobs turned into an empty stare. And the changes took her. First were the antlers, twisted shapes like hands grasping for a throat, or broken fingers upon a marble table. She screamed her agony, but before long her tongue became black with rot, turning her cries to throaty wails. Her skin clung to bones which hardened to pine. Nails were pushed aside by timber claws. Teeth sharpened, joints reshaped into uncomfortable angles, and her face shed itself of skin and pushed out until it was caught somewhere between the image of a deer and the woman she had been. In the end, only her eyes remained the same purple hue. Fury fueled the thing that had once lurked within Kiara. It tore through the mountains of Scoville's jaw, leaving a trail of butchered animal corpses and sundered trees in its wake. When the snow fell, the creature charged on until the cold froze its blood and buried it beneath the snow, as Kiara had buried it for so very long. Even unable to move, its rage burned on until spring came, and with it the melting of the snow and the thawing of its body. Hunger matched malice by the time it was free from its frozen prison, and the creature plowed through deer and bear and wood to sate it. Nothing could. It hunted for weeks before it found the prey it had not known it needed. There were two of them, animals without fur that walked on two legs. It took down the larger one first, sinking its teeth into the throat, pulling back with a tearing sound followed by a snapping as it ate, thrusting its head back like a raven. And then, pain that is not hunger. Why can't I move? Why does it hurt so much? The man with the bow, he hurt me. He scares me. He's like me. He knows the scent. He...
Well?
Its mind was scrambled and hard to follow, but I'm certain it didn't kill another human. Only your father.
There was that other woman. Brill, I think it was. Kiara killed her. So she should be a wendigo as well, right?
Brill's death unleashed the wendigo. The hag cursed Kiara, and the catalyst was the murder she committed. The curse wouldn't spread to Brill because Kiara wasn't a wendigo yet.
I think I get it. What are you doing?
Harvesting some of its skin.
Better question. Why are you doing that?
Wendigos are moonspawn that are practically human. If not for certain excretions, they'd be attacked by every other moonspawn they neared. Some of those excretions can be harvested from its skin and used to create a salve that masks humans from the noses of moonspawn. I won't be long. What was it you wanted to say before?
What next? What about the hag? Should we kill it?
I'm not nearly strong enough to defeat the hag. In fact, there's only two people I know who might stand a chance, and one of them is a witch herself.
Oh.
But to answer your question, I'll be heading to Elsbin. I can bring you safely to the next town so you can recover and properly grieve for your father.
Dedris? Let me come with you to Elsbin.
Are you certain? It's over a week's journey, and I have to make a stop along the way.
I am. Elsbin is one of the largest cities in Midora. My father often talks about going there to help the thousands that can't afford help. I don't know if I could ever make the journey on my own, but with you, it stands to reason that I'd survive. Besides, this way you can actually train me on how to use a spear, since that lesson was hardly adequate.
Very well. Let us be off then.
Through the night?
We can't sleep on the road while the moonspawn are on their hunt.
Right. Thank you. Without you, I'd be dead, and my father would be unavenged.
Think nothing of it. It is the duty of the path I choose to walk.
Still, a life on the road is a lonely one. I've always yearned to settle down, but Father could never stay in one place long enough for me to bother growing close to anyone.
You may find what you seek in Elsbin. The city is always in want of healers. You may have a hard time leaving if you ever tried.
I hope you're right.
I know the city well. A woman of your expertise will be of great value to the people who live there.
That's kind of you to say.
It is merely the truth. For all the monsters I slay, I am usually too late to save a life.
You saved mine.
I was still too slow.
No one can save everyone.
We've lingered here long enough.
Thank you very much for watching today's episode of Bestiary of a Nighthunter. Thank you very much to those of you who have decided to support this project on Patreon, with a specific shout out to Kyle Datu and Bridget.